Good deal. Well, listen, special guest today. We've done this a handful of times now with great success. It seems to me, Joel, that when we have a guest, our podcasts seem better. I don't know. Yeah. We get a lot more views and a lot more interaction and engagement when it's not me and you talking.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, we have somebody that's interesting. So today we have a friend of ours, friend of the American Hunting Lease Associations, gone back several years to his days with the Sportsman's Alliance. He's now the president and CEO of the National Deer Alliance. Today with us is Mr. Nick Pinnizotto. And I'm saying that right. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
what
right.
I thought.
Yeah, you nailed it. Yep.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Nick, for joining us, man. We really appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate being here. And now all of a sudden I'm unnerved because you've said that your shows are better with guests, and now all of a sudden the bar's been raised. So you suckered me in, and then now you put me in a position to succeed or not. So we'll see how it goes.
You will deliver. I'm confident in you. Hey, if you don't mind, before we get into some of the stuff we want to talk about, can you just kind of give me the quick Nick Pinnizotto story? Just, where you're from, where you living now, how you got to where you are. I mean, I think people really like to see that kind of behind the scenes stuff, or just kind of get to know you a little bit before we get into the big stuff.
Sure. Yeah, this always ends up being the most difficult question, actually. I grew up, so I run the National Deer Alliance, president and CEO of the National Deer Alliance, and it's, I guess, fitting that I've ended up in this role because I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, rural Western Pennsylvania, as a deer hunter. Even from well before I was old enough to hunt, I thought I was a deer hunter and wanted to be a deer hunter and loved deer. And I just grew up thinking that everybody hunted because where I lived, everybody did hunt. All the neighbors, their sons, their daughters, and it was just that's what everybody did. It wasn't until I got a little bit older and got out to see the rest of the world that I realized that we're actually less than 5% of the population. So that was a bit of an eye-opener for me. But at any rate, always interested in conservation and the outdoors. That's what we had where I grew up, so that's what we participated in. Went off to college. The early part of my career, I worked I did some agricultural work, but then worked in stream and river restoration work, water quality, for 11 years with an organization called the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy, where I ran our watershed conservation program. That was a lot of fun. And then I stepped over into wildlife for a time and I was the CEO of Delta Waterfowl Foundation, which is based in Bismarck, North Dakota, and also we had an office in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and stayed in wildlife. Well, actually, I guess sporting issues in general. You mentioned I was with the Sportsman's Alliance, where I was the president and CEO there, and the best way to summarize that is to say that we essentially fight for the rights of hunters and outdoors people. Fishing is not under attack quite as much as the hunting is, but as people I'm sure have noticed in recent years, there are many, many more attacks on our hunting opportunities, and ultimately ends up being attacks on wildlife. So I did that for a while, which was a great job. And I know it's an organization that you still support and are really good people there. So if you're not familiar with the Sportsman's Alliance, check them out. And then from there, that was in Columbus, Ohio. And from there, then I had the opportunity to be the first CEO of the National Deer Alliance. And to be quite honest about it, it was just something that I had a hard time passing up, being a passionate deer person. And how often do you get the opportunity to start something that's really cool and really important, and it's right up your alley in terms of personal interest and passion. So I've been with the Deer Alliance now for a little over 4 years, or actually going on 4 years, I'm sorry. And time is flying, but we're doing a lot of great stuff and continuing to grow. And I moved back to where I'm from, back to Western Pennsylvania again.
Outstanding. So it was important for you to be the first CEO and president of the NDA. Kind of stands out. Did that put you kind of over the top, wanting to start something?
Well, it's just, I don't think you get those opportunities too often. It's a pretty unique thing. And so I jumped at it, and I'm glad that I did.
Nick, tell me a little bit about how the NDA got started and how that opportunity presented itself to you, because you're speaking Sean's language. He always says, make your passion your paycheck. And it sounds like you've been able to do that. So kind of give us a background on the organization itself.
Sure. So the Deer Alliance, it ends up being an interesting story, actually. But it all started really with Quality Deer Management Association. They were doing some of their own strategic planning, trying to figure out how they could grow and looking at their mission and all these types of things, and they noticed that there was a pretty significant void when it comes to national deer policy issues. So we're not talking the more on the ground types of things that they're known for now, and protecting younger deer and those types of things. But they wanted to see where are some opportunities for us to maybe do more. And after a lot of thought, they ended up holding what they called the North American, I think it was called the North American Whitetail Summit. And that was in Branson, Missouri, out at Bass Pro Shops. And they invited, I think they had about 300 people there to come in and start talking about this issue. And what ended up coming out of that was that not that QDMA really needed to change who they were, because so many people were just bought into what they do, their core mission. It was that what's really needed is an organization to be a voice for all deer and all hunters across the country, whether you're a let them go so they can grow guy, or whether you're a stump setter guy that goes out 2 or 3 times a year, or if you're a mule deer hunter, blacktail. Ultimately, we just needed a policy voice for deer, because there's so much policy. I tell people that any one time during the year, there are probably easily 50, but probably closer to 100 different bills or pieces of legislation or potential regulations that are impacting deer or hunters right now as we talk about this. And nobody was really stewarding that and being the overarching voice and participant. So they brought in a bunch of people to form the board of directors. It included the other major deer groups, Mule Deer Foundation and Whitetails Unlimited. And once they got some money generated, it came time to hire somebody. And this is where the story gets a little funny, and that is, I actually wrote letters of recommendation for 2 other candidates for this job, because I was certainly happy with what I was doing at the Sportsman's Alliance, and I thought that this was important, and I recommended some really good people. And ultimately, the board kind of come back to me and hoped that I'd have an interest in it. And after some back and forth and a lot of thought and just talking through it with family, ultimately I made the decision that it was worth a go, that it was that important. And again, just considering that these opportunities don't come around every day, even though it was a little bit scary and risky, with it being so new, I decided I was up for the challenge, and here we are going on 4 years later. And I think we're all happy, and I think we're doing well. So it was a good decision.
Yeah, I've been in situations like that where somebody writes a letter of recommendation, or you're talking to somebody about somebody else, and then it just kind of clicks. And you think, wait a minute, that guy's pretty sharp, or that lady really had her act together. Let's see if there's a way, that we can attract them. So, well, good. I think we're all, better off. I know the NDA is better off having you there. I think that's certainly my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's something just come up here in the last week that I've read about. I'll get your take on it. And that's the Buffalo County, Wisconsin situation, which I find very interesting, a little puzzling, but for those of you who don't know, Buffalo County has a CDAC, which is a Citizens Deer Advisory Council. So Wisconsin went out and said, county by county, let's get the people involved in making recommendations on how we should, what the bag limits are. The CDAC in Buffalo County, Wisconsin, so Boone and Crockett lists Buffalo County as the #1 buck producing county in the country. They want to go antlerless only this year, does only, because the deer population is too high. So they think if they just take out does, leave the bucks alone, that they'll help mitigate that. And I'll give you my opinion on it first, is that I think it's unfair to do that this soon. To me, it seems like you could do it. Let's say we're going to do this in 2020 and give the guides and the outfitters and the hotels and the local commerce in Buffalo County at least a year, 18 months to prep, to say, okay, we know this is coming.
Yeah, there's so many periphery kind of businesses and individuals affected, but not just the hunters and the guys who want to take a wall hanger there.
Nick, you familiar with the situation? I mean, you want to weigh in on that at all, or what do you think?
So something that big, we're certainly going to be aware of. It was actually the main feature point in our newsletter that went out yesterday. And we also based our survey question around it for the week. And so, yeah, you guys hit the nail on the head. It's not as simple as, okay, from a management perspective, we need to take a lot more deer off the landscape, so we're just going to shut down buck season, basically.
Right.
But I think what they got was the true desired result, and I think the desired result was to get people's attention. The committees, they don't actually get to set the policy; they make the recommendation. And so, therefore, when you make let's just say, I don't want to, outlandish is the wrong term, but let's just a vote that is sort of eye catching and is going to make a lot of noise. You can do that with the cover of knowing that it's likely that's never going to get implemented. But you can get the attention of people by saying, listen, we have too many deer in this county, and it's great that this is the number one Boone and Crockett county in the country and known by anybody that likes to pursue older deer. Everybody knows about Buffalo County, Wisconsin, but they do have an issue with too many deer. So to your point, I think that if this were truly to be implemented, that you do have to give people notice, because so you've got outfitters that have already got hunts booked. You've got people who lease land up there, maybe multi-year leases, where part of their deal when they signed that wasn't that they might not get to hunt a buck one year. So you have those types of things. But and then you got youth who are coming up that are going to be new hunters that would really surely like to fill a buck tag, I would think. And then there's the whole other part of it is you can't say that we have too many deer on the landscape and then protect the whole sex of them for a season, because now all of those bucks that were going to be taken off the landscape, which tend to be big eaters, by the way,
right?
They're still going to be out there. So I think what they really wanted to do is to get people's attention. Now, all of that being said, I think one of the big discussion points here is that when people go to Buffalo County, Wisconsin to hunt, and it is a huge destination from non-residents, they're going there to shoot a buck. And what's happening is they're outfitters, people that leaseholders and so on, they're not taking enough does off the property. So let's have a realistic conversation about how do we get more does off the property. Maybe it's an extended winter season. Maybe it's an earlier opportunity that's focused on youth and seniors. Maybe it's just saying, like, you can take as many antlerless tags as you want and fill those suckers so that we can thin things down. So right. I'm hopeful that that's where the conversation ends up leading to.
Yeah, the thing that stood out to me first was, okay, well, so you're going to protect half, which is probably not quite half, and then nobody's going to come to Wisconsin for the most part to deer hunt this year. So yeah, and my heart went out to guys who probably had this hunt. They probably saved up for 3 or 4 years. They took vacation time in advance at work, so they're planning on it. And then yeah, it just seemed to me to be unfair, and I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me. And the thing is, I love the CDAC, the Citizens Deer Advisory Council model, because this is actually the government of Wisconsin saying, we want your opinion. And what I read about it was that they rarely go against the recommendations of the CDAC. So, maybe there's a wink and a nod there, and the CDAC says, hey, look, we don't really want this. Yeah. We get it. But yeah. Are there other states, Nick, or what do you know about this Citizens Deer Advisory Council model? I know in Indiana, where we are, it's been discussed and tried to get going, but to no avail.
Yeah, so I think just about every state has some form or model of this where they try to get input from the public. It's not always like Wisconsin, where it's really drilled down by county, and these are essentially political entities at this point. But I think that I can't really think of states that don't have some mechanism where they try to get feedback from hunters on deer management. It's some of it's really weak. Like I don't think you can go into a large state, for example, and do a handful of public gatherings and say you went and got input. I don't think that's good enough.
Right.
But I think that for the most part, states are trying to do that. They want to get input, but at the end of the day, it's the state that is mandated to handle wildlife management, and chief among that management is the most popular wildlife that we have in this country, and that's deer. So yeah, they have to make the decisions.
Makes sense. Well, let's ease into kind of the topic that made us think to give you a shout, and that's CWD. Mm-hmm. And let me preface the whole conversation we're getting ready to have with a couple of things. First of all, there seems to be a clear line of demarcation between the believers and the not believers. And maybe not. Everybody, I think, believes and understands and agrees that there is a disease. It's not a zombie disease, but there is a disease that is real. I think the differences of opinion come on likely the solution and what that may be. But from the podcasts I've watched, the videos that I've seen, most conversations go one of two ways. How dare they think they can come in here and tell me that I can't put a salt lick on my property? And the other one is just goes into scientific jargon, neither of which I think addresses most of the hunters in this country who are just logical thinkers and want to know what they should be doing or what they shouldn't be doing. So, what I'd like to do is just kind of have a conversation about what your opinion of, we don't need to get into the whole prions and how they're left in the soil. I think most people, if they want to know, they know that. But, left unchecked, what's it look like? And I'll be honest with you, Nick, I live in Indiana. It has not affected me one bit.
Right.
So, honestly, I'm not even embarrassed to say it. I really haven't cared up until now. But now there's enough, buzz about it where like, okay, let's find out. Let's just, let's go to the NDA and let's find out what their position is and, see what we need to do.
Yeah. And then let me just take a deep breath here before I get into this. CWD is something I've said many times in various presentations and meetings that it's a monster with many heads. And you might be able to lop one off, but you aren't going to kill it. You got a lot of different things to deal with, so it's complicated. But let's, to your point, let's stay away from prions and transmission and all these types of things, and let's focus on what it means to hunters, why they should care, and what they can do about it. And, to your point, it's not embarrassing at all to say you just don't know and you haven't cared that much about it, because the reality is, even though we've got CWD in, I think, 26 states now, Oklahoma just come up with a positive on a deer farm the last week. So I think that takes us back to 26. But at any rate, more than half the states in the country and 3 Canadian provinces have CWD. But when you boil down locally where the cases have been found, it doesn't touch most of the people in those states. So, for example, I'm in Pennsylvania, and there are a few CWD management zones. But if you don't live near one of those zones, it's still not really on your radar screen. Okay, so you're in a state in Indiana where they haven't found CWD yet. So therefore, it's really not on your radar screen, right, unless you were going to go to, let's say, somewhere, another state, and let's say you're going to go over to Ohio and in their CWD area, you'd probably pay more attention. So that's one of the challenges, is it just doesn't, even though it impacts every single person that loves deer and loves deer hunting, it doesn't personally touch them yet. So it's almost like a generalization, like, well, do you care about the environment? Well, everyone's going to say, well, yeah, I care about it. And then someone says, well, okay, we want you to do these 3 things, even though it doesn't actually really affect you. Then people are like, they don't pay attention anymore. So CWD is kind of like that. The other problem with CWD is it's not you talked about believers and non-believers, right? So it's really hard. Nobody really believes, or at least very few people really believe in like the boogeyman, right?
Right.
You have this underlying fear of it maybe, but nobody really believes in it. And it's because they don't see it. No one's ever saw it. And that's another issue with CWD, in that it is not it's not a visible disease. So you'll have people who, we'll call them, even though they may believe, we'll just, for simplification, let's call them non-believers, okay?
All right.
You have non-believers who will say things like, if it's such a problem, where are all the dead deer?
Heard it.
And the very difficult answer to that is there are dead deer out there. Number one, how many deer have you walked by that were dead, but you just said, oh, there's a dead deer, so you didn't add it to the list of dead deer that you've seen. But the other part of that is that CWD kills in a very slow, methodical manner, and it doesn't take out a bunch of deer all at the same time. So we get people that will say things like, well, EHD is actually the bigger problem, because what happens when deer die of EHD, they all die at the same time, they all die on the same stretch of stream, and it stinks to high heaven, and people see all these dead deer laying there. And it's really easy to see why people they see that and they say, that's a problem.
Sure.
And it is a problem. However, the long story of EHD is that deer recover from it. It isn't 100% fatal. It kills a lot of deer, but deer also can recover from it, and they can also develop antibodies. That's not the case with CWD. So CWD is a slow killer. You don't have piles of deer and carcasses laying out there. And I got to see it to believe it crowd, it's going to be tough to explain to them or get them to understand why it's such a concern. And then other concerns too are, we talk about states reporting this time of year, and actually a little bit earlier in the year, states are reporting their harvest from the previous year. And you've got states that have CWD that are still breaking harvest records. And that's very confusing to people, because you'll have some, and this has been a real challenge for us, you have some who are, I guess they consider themselves celebrities. I don't consider anyone that really hunts and puts a video together as a celebrity necessarily.
God bless you.
Yeah,
I've said that. We've had this conversation a dozen times. If you go to any of the big trade shows, it's like this guy or this lady are a celebrity in this room. They walk out of this building and go across the street to a restaurant. They have no idea who they are, but alas, they are celebrities, I guess, in our world. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. I mean, and I don't mean to take it that direction, other than to say they do. There are some really good filmmakers out there that I think do our sport some really good justice. But however, to say that some of these people, they're pushing against the CWD issue by saying things like, this is nothing for you to worry about. There are still plenty of deer, and you'll shoot most deer before they die of CWD, and that actually is true. But before you shoot that deer, how long did it walk around with the disease potentially and transmit it to other deer? So it's much more complicated than what some of these people try to lead you to believe. So, for example, every one of us, we are predisposed to have biases and to want to believe things that support our notion of things. So a good example of this is health. If someone gives you a bad diagnosis, a lot of people will take that information and they don't believe it. They don't want to believe it because it's bad news. You tell a deer hunter that, hey, there's a disease out there that's impacting deer. We don't know how to get rid of it. We don't have anything immediately on the horizon we think that's going to stop it. And you might see the day where you can't hunt deer anymore. Most people are just not going to want to believe it. So when you add to that an affinity bias, people that they like going on their TV show or doing a rant on Facebook or wherever saying, oh, this is nothing to worry about. It's all made up by the quote, idiots at the DNR and all this stuff. Then people believe that because it's the news that they want to hear. They don't want to hear the hard message. And so we're in the business of delivering. It is a hard message, but I think we're trying to deliver accurate information, important information that hunters need to know, and also to tell hunters, we're not telling you that you need to worry about quitting hunting or stop hunting. And in fact, what we're telling you is hunters are going to be a big part of the solution to this disease, because we need deer shot, we need samples, and we need to be able to monitor this thing while the science catches up to it. And we can't do that without hunters. So don't hang up your boots and your gun and say, I'm done. You need to ask yourself, what can I do to be a help to this situation? Because as a hunter and as a conservationist, I have a responsibility to help deal with it. Not put your head in the sand and say, number one, it's fake, we don't need to worry about it, or number two, I just give up and I'm going to go, golf 10 more times a year, something like that, for an example.
I feel for the guys that, in the northwestern corner of Illinois and the guys in Wisconsin. I do feel for them because I know it's real to them. They get up and there's, it's and I'll tell you, a friend of ours asked us, or he said, in Illinois they had CWD was in 3 counties, and then sharpshooters came out, or they tried to eradicate the deer herd and killed like 2,200 deer, and now it's in 13 or 14 counties. And that's another one. That's a tough question to answer. He said if eradicating them works, if their solution works, how is it spreading?
Yeah. So there's a couple points to that. Timing is everything. And so, for example, let's say you find CWD, and then you say we need to go in and wipe out a bunch of deer, but you don't realize before you went that it was already further spread than what you knew. Then at that point, it's kind of too late to apply that practice. So there is definitely, right now, the best tool in the toolbox, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because this is not a popular one with hunters, and I get it, the best tool we have in the toolbox right now is to reduce herds in the area where we know it exists, to slow that spread. And frankly, what we're doing, we can't stop it, but what we can try to do is buy time until we get better science, better research for dealing with it. So when you go into these areas and have to do that, you've got a couple of options. One is hopefully hunters jump on board and say, okay, this sucks. I don't want to go and kill all these deer, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I have deer to hunt in the future, and my kids and my grandkids do. Hunters can roll up their sleeves and fill a whole bunch of tags and get the samples. And then the much less palatable option is that you have to bring in professional sharpshooters to take out a certain number. And nobody wants to do that. I can tell you any state that's ever done it wishes they didn't have to do that. So that's where I'm hoping that hunters can step up and be part of the solution here, understanding that just because everyone wants to point to the Wisconsin example where they tried to kill all the deer and it didn't work. And well, part of the issue is they did not understand at that time. And they were unfortunately for Wisconsin, they were the very early guinea pigs of this thing. And they didn't know the full extent to how far the disease had spread. And therefore, it's likely obviously it didn't work. And a big reason for that not working may have simply just been it was too late. It was already spread too far, and you can't put out these little hot spots that tend to pop up. So it's not fun, and I get it. I'm a deer hunter, love to hunt deer. I've got a CWD management zone just a short drive away from me here. It's close enough to where I do hunt that I'll get my deer tested. And I don't want to do that, and it stinks. But at the same time, it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility. And bad news does not get better with time. And you can either, well said. Yeah, I mean, you can either face up to it and deal with it and own it, like you can with any other problem that you encounter in life, or you can do the opposite, and you can just hope that it goes away. And if you think about anything you've dealt with in your life, that option rarely is effective.
I want to go back to something you just said. I'm going to make this very clear. I am not a CWD expert, and in fact, part of the dynamic of this podcast is I'm a 33-year-old guy. I've only been hunting for 3 or 4 years, so I'm relatively new to this lifestyle and all these things, deer hunting, that is, for 3 or 4 years. So about a month ago, you were at the Water, Oceans, and Wildlife Subcommittee hearing. You got a chance to speak, and part of your testimony, if you will, was CWD not only affecting the deer herd itself, but affecting, more of, I guess I'll just call him a casual hunter, someone who just sees this thing growing, doesn't know how to deal with it, and just becomes disinterested in the sport itself because the CWD epidemic is just too big to deal with and they don't know where to start. Do you see that leading to a decline in hunters in the long run?
That's a really good question. We know that some people that were about to quit hunting anyway have quit hunting, and they say, well, it was because of CWD. I think that's a very tiny percentage. I think that people were already on their way out the door for various reasons, and that was just made it easier for them to tell people they weren't going to do it anymore.
Right.
But that being said, we mentioned Wisconsin. I mean, I've gotten emails from people that say we shot 7 bucks on our farm this year, and they all 7 tested positive for CWD. I could see why those people would want to say, you know what, I'm getting out of the deer hunting hobby. But at any rate, so CWD is not just a deer disease, and this is something I focused on at the congressional hearing, and that is that when you look at where the money comes from to manage all wildlife in the country, it really, other than state budgets, it comes from 2 really big places. One of those is funds derived from the Pittman-Robertson Act, which is a tax that a lot of people listening might not even realize they pay when they buy a firearm and they buy ammo and certain hunting gear. And it also comes from the sale of licenses. And then when you further extrapolate that out, and you see that 80% of all people who buy a hunting license are pursuing big game, and most of those people are pursuing deer. And if you start cutting into the number of people participating in deer hunting, you are directly cutting then funds that go to manage all wildlife. Because if deer, for all intents and purposes, deer are carrying the weight of all wildlife conservation in North America on their backs.
Yeah, they do drive the bus for sure. I mean, they drive the whole industry.
Yeah. So we can't have this massive loss of hunters, and then not expect it to have a really negative impact on even if you're a bird watcher, CWD affects you. Okay. It affects the management of threatened and endangered species. So it's an everyone issue, but at the same time, again, deer hunters, if you're listening to this and you're kind of on the fence, I mean, I just want you to say, you know what, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to be a leader on this deal. And I'm going to embrace the fact that deer carry the weight, and I'm going to embrace the fact that I'm a deer hunter and that I have an opportunity to lead here. And I'm going to do what's asked of me. I'm not going to be afraid to ask questions. That's okay. But for the most part, I'm going to do what's asked of me, and I'm going to try to do my part, and I'm going to convince my friends to do the same. And what is looking like a really scary situation for the future of deer and deer hunting right now might actually turn out to be one of our brightest moments.
You know, I think it's something where we were talking about it before we started shooting this podcast. Was it's hard for a guy to hear bad news, like you said, and if that bad news is basically getting rid of the entire deer population in their area, they don't want to hear that because that's their passion. They want to continue to hunt, but I don't think it's fair for that same guy to say, well, EHD, or as you know, Ted Nugent said, weather kills more deer than
True.
CWD is. We're not talking about the climate. We're not talking about any other diseases. We're trying to have a conversation about CWD and what it's doing to deer population. So how do you feel like we can keep on topic and keep the conversation from when you're having a conversation with someone who, you know, has a differing opinion from you? How do you keep it on CWD and not say, you know, people try to downplay it by saying, well, this is a bigger issue. Well, we're not talking about that issue. We're talking about CWD. What advice would you give someone who's trying to have that conversation with a fellow hunter?
Yeah, I think part of it is we're doing a little bit of catch up on the communications game. So we have a group. It's the CWD coalition of non-government, nonprofit conservation organizations. There are scientists. There are people from state wildlife agencies, and we have come together and created what we call the CWD National Plan, with communications being a big part of that. And we are now meeting regularly to, number one, make sure that if we're spending resources, that we're putting our resources in the places where they have a chance to be the most effective. So we can't have everybody running off with their own message and not staying on the important message, and that's the one that's driven by the science and the facts. So we don't get into conjecture. We only talk about what we know about and what we know to be true. And as we become more organized and better at getting this message out, we'll essentially flood the market with the right information. And really, some people will still just not want to believe it, and they'll take their own position. That's fine. But there's a lot of people out there that we never hear from that are just kind of sitting there and paying attention and listening. And we believe that when that information is fully out there and people have it in consumable pieces, it's going to be really hard to dispute that it's an issue that needs to be dealt with. And we think that we will have the support of the masses to deal with this thing. So that's I'm not dodging your question, but just to say that we're working really hard to get the right messages out there. But in the meantime, if you have a question, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call. You can contact me at the National Deer Alliance. If you're a QDMA member, you can contact those folks as an example. You go to the CWD Alliance website, and this is one of the easiest things you can do, and we continually put this out there. It's CWD-Alliance, CWD-info.org, or just put in Google CWD Alliance. And it is the clearinghouse for the most up-to-date and available science and information, news articles that you can find on this disease. None of it's made up. It's just the facts. And you can read for yourself, and you can share it with others. And it's just a tremendous resource. So that's a really good place to point people.
You actually didn't dodge the question at all, by the way. I think that's a great answer, because what we're finding is people want to learn things kind of on their own terms, and getting into a debate, online or whatever it is, doesn't seem to have much merit, and nothing really gets done. So, having something like CWD-info.org seems like a great resource for people who really are passionate about this and want to learn more about it.
Yeah, we can put that up for sure on the podcast. I want to back up real quick because I saw something on TV, and I know a lot of people did. This has been a few months ago now. Actually, it was during the Harrisburg show, and it was in, obviously in Pennsylvania. But there was a doctor that stood up with the United Sportsmen of Pennsylvania and said, "Hey, we solved it. We figured it out. We've got a cure for CWD," or at least insinuated that one was very close. And I guess I really like to just kind of get your thoughts on that, because to a casual CWD person like myself, I see a blip on the screen. And I'm like, oh, good, they fixed it, And I know there's way more to it than that. So, I mean, do you have an opinion on what that was said? Was that just a little premature, or is there hope there? Or both?
All right. So,
or do you want to pass?
No, I'm not going to pass.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not afraid of it, and frankly, I don't care what that guy thinks or what those people think. It was a very irresponsible and inappropriate message to put out there, and the way they did it was inappropriate.
See, that pisses me off. I mean, that's honestly, that's just
it just sets us back.
Completely, misguiding.
It sets us back, and this is a group that they've sent me emails when we got started with the Deer Alliance because we didn't jump in and support some of the things they want. Listen, I am all for sportsmen being passionate about their issues. I'm all for sportsmen not being afraid to question their state wildlife agencies. What I am not for is existing for the sole purpose to be an antagonist and to get in the way of issues and to cause problems. And that's essentially what's happened with that issue. I happened to be at the Southeast Deer Study Group meeting when this came out. That's one of the biggest meetings of deer experts, researchers, wildlife managers in the country. And everybody's phones are blowing up with this. Okay. And the way that video was presented, you stand on the steps of the Capitol, which any one of us can do. We could go stand on the Capitol and shoot a video and make it look like some kind of official announcement. And it made a lot of people think that there was an official announcement from the Pennsylvania Game Commission that there was a cure for CWD, when in fact it is the furthest thing from the truth. It's based on a theory that has not been supported by any other science or any other scientists. And the theory of prions being the cause of CWD remains the accepted cause of CWD, and there's tons of research to support it. We had to turn around very quickly and put out an article that basically reiterated that to address that issue. And then on top of that, we had other people with the title of doctor in front of their name who were saying things like basically scaring the hell out of people, telling them that CWD is it's only a matter of time until it infects people, and which is also
there's been no cases of that. Correct?
There have been no cases of that, so we had to turn around and we had put out another article saying that despite what you may hear, there has never been a single case of a human being getting CWD. We're not telling you that you shouldn't get your deer tested. We're not telling you that if it tests positive that you should eat it. We're not telling you that. We're telling you that despite this disease being around for decades, and undoubtedly people eating thousands of CWD infected deer, there has not been one documented case of someone getting CWD or a related type of illness, whether we're talking about Alzheimer's or CJD, despite the CDC's looking for it, the National Prion Center at Case Western Reserve is looking for these connections, and they have not found them. So therefore, to respond to an interviewer's question or to be quoted in an article saying something like it's only a matter of time, to me is not helpful. Only say what you know, not what you think you might know, or what you might think might attract funding to you, or make you look like you're important or to get attention. When people do stuff like that to get attention, and they use deer and hunting is the way to do that. And I don't care if you're a hunting celebrity with a TV show, a podcast, or if you're a doctor of whatever, or if you're just a group that doesn't like your state wildlife agency. When you do that nonsense on the backs of deer and wildlife and conservation, I got a real problem with that. And there's a lot of that going on, and it's not helpful, and it needs to stop.
So, in all honesty, that whole thing was bogus from the. I mean, just should let it go, right?
Here's what there's no the theory of spiroplasma bacteria causing CWD is not an accepted.
Okay.
It's not accepted, and this is by many. We work with really the top scientists. We talk. I'm emailing with one while we're talking. As a matter of fact, none of them come close to supporting that idea, and it's not. To go on, and by the way, if you really watched that press conference, they went on and said they were going to also solve these other human diseases.
I'm gonna go back and watch that.
Yeah, now I have to
Yeah.
watch it.
Things that all of a sudden this sportsman's group is they found the scientist and they're going to go and solve this problem that nobody's been able to solve with these human diseases. And by the way, when you listen to the list, it was like the third thing on the list was they were going to start getting to people. Now, wouldn't you think that the first thing you would do is try to help people? I mean, I love deer, but,
that's a good point.
Yeah. I don't want to discourage enthusiasm, but there are right ways to do things. And I think people who want to do things the right way, they're collaborative. And none of this was collaborative. It came out of nowhere. And I guess it achieved the desired effect. And that was they got a lot of clicks and likes and a lot of people were talking about it.
Yeah, well, it didn't last very long, though. So, okay. Well, before we wrap up, we've got a little something that we like to end when we have a guest in studio. We call it the tail of the tape. So I've got 6 questions I'd like to ask you. They're lighthearted. Just, we see where you stand on these very important topics. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Preferred tree stand snack?
Oh, peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
White bread, wheat bread?
I try to do wheat mostly.
Yeah, you can try.
To do good.
Face paint, mask, or nothing?
The most fun thing to do is face paint, but it's also one of the least convenient. So I typically go mask.
Yeah, I'm a face paint guy, and I think Joel's he's a mask
nothing.
or nothing. Yeah, he's a nothing guy. I can't eat with a mask on. There's stuff to do up there. What's your favorite state to hunt? And you've told me before you've got a secret, and I'm not going to blow it. But if you tell me, if you say that, I'll know it. What is it?
Favorite state? That's. I always tell people this: if I could pick one hunt to do, it's anything with my family, and regardless of outcome, I could care less. But probably right now, if someone said you got a chance to go do a bow hunt anywhere, it's probably going to be Illinois. Or I really love Delaware. I've come to love Delaware in recent years.
That's what you told me a couple months ago. I was like, Delaware, and you said, yeah, man, there's big deer running around Delaware.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. So those are the 2 places.
What's the best outdoor TV show you watch regularly?
There are some. So I love Heartland Bowhunter. Those guys are great. I know them. They're friends. Great guys, and also Melissa Bachman's Winchester Deadly Passion. Melissa's a great person. Everything you see on her shows are absolutely real. Most of you listening think you could hang with her. I can promise you can't. She's the real deal. So those couples stand out for sure.
Best hunting app on your phone?
Scout Look Weather, Onyx Maps.
Yeah, we're Hunt Stand. I'm a Hunt Stand guy.
They're all really helpful. It's cool to have some options out there.
Yeah, it is. And last thing is bucket list hunt. What's your one hunt that you'd do if you could?
Man, I've bow hunted elk before, but it's been just kind of bopping around a little bit. So I still want to go do a good bona fide bow hunt for elk somewhere where I've got a chance at a good animal. So I guess probably that. But at the end of the day, like I say this without any joke at all. I'm just as happy sitting on a stump waiting for a gray squirrel to come by as anything else. I just love being out there.
Good for you. You said stump setter earlier, and it made me laugh because when I was first learning to deer hunt, a friend of mine said, "This is the resting stump." As we were walking to our tree stand, I was like, "What's that mean?" He's like, "I just got to stop here and take a rest." We sat down, smoked a cigarette on that stump, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." Nick, why don't you tell our listeners or viewers where they can join the NDA, how much it costs, which I believe is free, if I'm not mistaken, and get on your mailing list and all that kind of stuff. And by the way, the American Hunting Lease Association is a proud supporter of the NDA, so we are proud to get behind you guys and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you guys doing that for sure, and that's why we're able to offer free memberships. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to tell people they can find us at. Just go to nationaldeeralliance.com or just do a Google search. You'll find us, and you'll see a very big, bold green button right there that says join now. It won't cost you a thing. And what we do is every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Eastern time, you will get our weekly NDA on Watch newsletter where people really describe it as the USA Today of deer news, because we cover deer news from all across the country and try to include some fun stuff in there as well. And we also survey our members every single week on all kinds of issues related to deer and deer hunting, and people have a lot of fun with that. And also our coffee and deer show is pretty popular too. So that's available in video form and also podcast form. And you can find that all on our website or our Facebook page.
Outstanding. Yeah, the newsletter you get weekly, it's very well done. A lot of red meat in it, as they say. Yeah. So I enjoy reading it every week. So, hey, Nick, we appreciate it as always. Just anytime we can get you on or around, it makes things a little brighter, and we hope we've helped you out a little bit and shine some light on CWD. If anybody needs any more information on CWD, you can follow the links that we'll put at the bottom of the video. So, Hey, man, you be safe, and we'll talk to you sometime at a trade show, I'm sure, soon.
Yeah, I would say thanks again, and thank you guys for, you could just be business as usual, but you're not. You're choosing to do this and to be an outreach mechanism and to talk about tough issues. So I appreciate your leadership on that. And then I would just request the next time you have me on, let's talk about killing deer.
Let's do it.
All day long. Not a problem,
All right.
man.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. Take care, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. That's exactly what I thought it'd be. That guy knows his stuff.
He does.
Yeah. So fantastic. Yeah, we're lucky to know him. He's one of those guys that you just kind of we met with Sportsman's Alliance, and then he becomes CEO and president of the NDA, and then Sean Curran from the Sportsman's Alliance. Now he's moved on. Mm-hmm. I think he's with the Ruffed Grouse Society. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool meeting people like that are passionate like we are, and have gone on to different leadership roles.
It also helps to get people who are way more knowledgeable than I am on topics.
Yeah, it does help. Hey, you know what? If CWD was here, I'd be waving the CWD flag like crazy. I just haven't.
Yeah, I know, and it's tricky too, because I think part of the CWD awareness initiative that guys like Nick are trying to put on is it's going to be here, is essentially what he's saying. There's certain facts that you just can't argue. 20 years ago it was in one state. It's in 26 now. It's not hard to think that here in a couple of years it could be affecting Indiana. It's not unreasonable to think that. And, at least I just don't, like I said, I don't know a lot about the subject, and that's why we have guys like Nick on so we can talk to him. But, it just seems like there are certain things you just can't argue that are just fact-based. Like we talked about the guy who said they found the cure, and he did it on the steps of the Capitol or whatever it was.
Man, Nick hit that on the head. It looked official to me.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, it was
100% it looked official. But when you start arguing things like what causes CWD, those are just kind of based in fact, and it's hard to argue those because there are different variations. There's a human variation, there's a sheep variation that's been around for hundreds of years. Right. There's a bovine variation. It's all the same kind of protein, and there's just different variations of it. So for someone to come out and just egregiously make an inflammatory comment like, yeah, we found the cure and this is actually what causes it, it really is harmful to progressing towards a solution.
That guy even had a plan on how they were going to administer it to deer over a 5 and 10, I think 20-year period. So, one of the things that we just, so you just run out of time with a guy like Nick. His time is valuable.
Sure.
I can't keep him on the phone all day, but I know CWD can be passed. It's transmissible. So it can be passed through urine and saliva and feces and all those type of things. So I think it's the state of Virginia, it might be West Virginia. I apologize if I'm wrong. Good call. Is they have banned the sale of urine in that state. Again, I can't remember. I think it's Virginia. You can't sell deer urine. That to me seems plausible. If we don't know, and that could cause it, well, then why not? Baiting, and I'm not saying they should, but, baiting deer, it's legal in Ohio, Kentucky, I believe Michigan, but I'm not sure. Mineral licks, urine. There's so much of this stuff, and it's all industry, it's all commerce. Are they willing to say, hey, it's not just the hunters that need to step up and do their part, but the private deer farms,
right,
where allegedly the original CWD cases were private, deer from private deer farms that escaped.
And
Somebody should pay for that.
it extends farther than that also, because I've seen certain scientists talk about when a deer urinates on a plant, for example, and they have CWD, it's not just them urinating on the plant. It actually, that CWD, that protein makes a chemical bond to the plant itself. Mm-hmm. You start talking about agriculture and moving, product, across state lines or whatever it is. These people are basically saying it's not unreasonable to think if it's not in your state, it'll be there soon, if it's not already.
That's the thing. It could already be here. They just haven't, tested the right deer.
Sure.
The other question I wanted to ask Nick, and I might send him an email, is how, if I am within a CWD management zone, is there a number? If you're within 10 miles, 20 miles, and you harvest a deer, should you get it tested? When should I get it tested? I mean, obviously in Indiana, we don't have any reason to get our deer tested.
Right. My question would be,
when.
Being new to deer hunting and now CWD, how do I get a deer? Some guys wouldn't even know how to get a deer tested.
Yeah.
I kill this deer and I'm just looking at it.
I know you got to take it to a biologist and they have to take brain samples. I know that there is no test for a live deer for CWD. So,
man, it's a big, complicated topic, and I think part of the reason it gets disputed so heavily is because the answers haven't been found yet. That's just the fact of the matter. But there are guys like Nick and organizations like his that are trying to figure out answers to why this is and how it is, so that we can come up with solutions on how to fix it. And I think it's an important conversation to keep having. I'd love to have someone on who is maybe a conspiracy theorist or a non-believer, as we call them. I think we know a couple.
Yeah, we know a couple. So, obviously it's an important topic because we didn't even talk about the fact that I doubled up on turkeys yesterday with my son-in-law.
Nice,
great story. But no, we'll talk CWD, and
I think we'll do more episodes, so we can get to it.
Fair enough, man.
Well, we can end on a little bit lighter note. I think Bobby's got something lined up.
Producer Bobby, what have you got?
Yeah, I'm back with a new game for you guys. This one.
Are we up on the big screen?
Yeah. So it doesn't include any pictures or images
no imagery.
or anything. So this is all going to be audio. This is a little game I call Turkey, Call, or Human. I've got some sound bites for you guys, and I want you to figure out.
All right.
I already know how I'm going to do.
Decide if they're made by a turkey,
okay,
a turkey call, or a human. So.
As long as we don't have to make them.
All right.
I got focus.
Oh, this is the technical difficulty part. There we go.
That's human.
I was going to say human, yeah.
Was it? I could tell by the hands. Those are very clearly human hands.
Yes, that one was human.
It just gave it away.
All right, here we go. Here's number 2.
That's a turkey.
I'd say that's a call.
Sean's right on that one. That one's an actual turkey.
Okay.
All right.
That's my uncle.
That sounds like something I would do, honestly.
Yeah. I'm going to say person.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's correct. That one's a human. All right, number 4.
That's a call, isn't it?
No, that's a hen. That's a turkey.
No,
it could be a call.
I think it's a call. I'm going to say call.
All right, Joel's right on that one.
Yes.
That was a call.
That's a good one. It must be a JT call.
That's right. Dude, speaking of which, that's a call also, right?
Yes, that one's also
Speaking of which, Jake has a tutorial video on how to use a mouth call. Yeah. And it is, I was watching it and I told you this. I think I could practice that. I feel like I could be good at a mouth call.
Yeah, well.
That last one was a mouth call.
Was it?
Yeah.
My son-in-law, Chad, he was calling. I can't remember. We were in the truck. No, we were in the truck. He started blowing goose call and duck call, and I was like, "Oh my gosh! Hopefully this isn't going to last for a 2-hour drive." But it didn't. And then in the blind yesterday, he puts a mouth call in, and I just kind of like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm not using it." Okay, good. They're hard.
Yeah,
that's all Jake uses.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it is. It is. And Chad can do it.
All right, this one will be the tiebreaker since you both have 1 point over.
Oh, I didn't know we were. See how to try.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a competition either.
All right.
All right.
All right, ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is the last one.
Turkeys.
Humans.
Going different. That'll go to Sean then.
I couldn't end on a tie, so I had to throw up a Hail Mary
I
there.
think there's 2 or 3 there.
I thought it was just really talented, like one of those kids you see at NWTF doing like the live calls or something.
Yeah.
So
Cool. All right. I'll take that one.
All right.
great.
Good deal. All right. We're out till next week.
Next week.
We'll try and have some an opposing CWD viewpoint, but if not, we'll have something fun and interesting to talk about.
Yep.
Later.
See ya.
Thank you. The American Hunting Podcast is brought to you by the American Hunting Lease Association. Everything you need to enjoy a safe, successful, and affordable hunting lease all in one place. Resources like the Secret to Hunting Private Land ebook and the Front Porch Kit, both free to download, to time-tested, attorney-approved, customizable lease agreements, and of course, the most affordable hunting lease liability insurance policy you will find. Protect your landowner, yourself, and every member of your hunt club with the AHLA's complete risk management package. The American Hunting Lease Association, better coverage, better service, all at a better price.
The American Hunting Podcast is brought to you by HuntStand.com and the HuntStand app. Build detailed maps of your hunting areas, view and share your hunting area maps with their revolutionary online mapping technology, and use advanced tools that let you examine and understand your hunting area. Then print your high-quality, fully customizable map on several types of materials. Download the HuntStand app or print a map. Visit HuntStand.com to start mapping now.
Guys, thanks for watching our podcast. Might not be the best podcast you've seen, but I know it's not the worst, and it will get better. If you want to take the ride with us, man, subscribe to this, like us, share us, or just tell somebody. Take it easy and hunt safe.